Hello and welcome back. This is Solo and Soaring with Yasmin Foragy. That's me. And I am so excited to share with you episode 2 of this secret podcast. So make sure you've gone and listened to episode 1 if you haven't already, because it really gives you a good solid grounding in what we're doing here, right? And this really builds on what we were doing in episode 1. So be sure to go and watch episode 1, listen to episode 1, and you're going to be really well positioned to take advantage of everything that we're going to be talking about today. So for those of you that just need that little bit of a refresher, in episode 1, we were talking about the power of a magnetic message, how it literally is the foundation stone of everything that you're doing in your business, right? Because if you were building a house, you'd build the foundation first, right? You wouldn't be sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder if this bulb would go nicely in this light fitting or this light fixture. You would be focusing in on, okay, how big is this foundation going to be? The depth of it? What are we going to reinforce it with? Etc., etc. I'm really showing my lack of knowledge in how you build a foundation in a house. So for me, when I work with clients, this is the first place that I start, is always with the messaging. And, if you've ever worked with me, you'll know that I can be very straight talking. Let's put it that way, right? If I feel like your message is just not hitting it, then I will tell you that, right? Because you know what? I'm doing you no favors whatsoever by telling you, oh, that's an amazing message, if I don't think it is. I remember I worked with this coach a few years back, and I remember I was putting on a masterclass, and I had this title and everything, and she was like, oh yeah, it's going to be great. And then afterwards, I didn't get the results that I wanted. And she came back to me and she said, I wouldn't have chosen that title. And I was like, that information would have been really helpful to me when I was planning it, right? So I'm not that person, right? I will always tell you. And I think the power in that is that, sometimes you're just too close to it, right? Especially with your messaging. Sometimes you're just too close to it and you can't see it. And when somebody from the outside, whether that's me or somebody else, can see it, they kind of go, oh, what about this? And you go, boom, it was right under your nose the whole time, but you just couldn't see it, right? So be sure to catch up on episode 1 because there's so much stuff in there around messaging. But today we're going to be talking about what really positions you, right? And I want to just take a moment and think about this from a positioning perspective, right? Because when you set up your business, you've been doing this for a few months, weeks, or years, doesn't really matter. But when you set up your business, you're not sitting there thinking, God, I can't wait to be blending into the crowd. I can't wait to be invisible, right? You want to really put yourself out there, even though it might feel scary, but you want to put yourself out there and you want people to see you as the person to work with. If you're a hypnotherapist, for weight loss or for making money, or if you're helping women with perimenopause, or if you're a financial planner helping people with wills or whatever it might be, you want people to see you as the person to go and work with, right? Because what that means is that people see you in a light that means like they're the best. I want to go and work with them because, it's almost like you've got this air about you. But that doesn't happen overnight. Like if you think about people that you might see on TV or on radio and you think, God, they've got such a high profile, but nobody like starts on TV, very, very rarely. And it's all about how you see this first, right? And we're going to be talking a lot more about this in another episode, but I want to just touch upon this because it's going to really give you that grounding in terms of what we're actually going to be talking about in this episode, okay? Because if you want to be perceived as the go-to expert, as the person to work with in your industry, in your field, you have got to see yourself as that person first, right? You can't wait for that validation from other people to tell you that you're the best person for this, right? And it's not about you getting arrogant or anything like that, but you have to see yourself as the go-to person. But you have to see yourself as the person that people want to work with. You have to see yourself as the person who is in demand, right? Way before anybody tells you, right? Because that is going to drive everything that you do, right? It's going to drive everything that you do. And when you have done that, the results, the reflection from the external will actually it will blow your mind. Okay. So I want to plant that seed because I am going to be talking a lot more about this in a later episode. And it's interesting because I feel like this piece is one of the kind of the hidden things that I do with my clients, my community. And it is so powerful. Like I just recently did a strategy day with my multiplier clients. We have 2 online strategy days twice a year. And it really gives you a chance to have a look at the big picture of what you're doing in your business. And one of the things that we were really focusing in on was exactly this. And one of my clients said, that's shifted things for me. And so it's really, really powerful. I want you to think about that. Just keep this in your mind. Like whatever's going on for you internally is being reflected back to you from the external. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about in this episode and why what I've just said is so important is because it really sets the scene for you with this particular strategy. So one of the things that I did very early on in my business is create a process, right? That would be uniquely mine. So if you think about Tiny Time Big Results, if you've read my book, for example, right, that's a really great manifestation example of my process, right? And that's what I want to talk to you about. It's about the power of creating a signature program, right? That really your high value clients can't say no to. I'm going to talk to you about why this is important and why this is going to be the game changer for you in your business. And I don't use that phrase lightly. And quite frankly, sometimes I cringe at when I use it and I go and think, oh my God, Yasmin, I can't believe you just said that again, right? But it really is the game changer because it shifts how you're showing up, right? So let's talk a little bit about this. So in this episode, here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about why I believe a signature program is absolutely crucial for you in your business, okay? How it massively simplifies your client attraction, right? And already, if you're working a 20-hour week business, if you're just working 3-4 hours a day, you want simplicity, right? And then I'm going to talk you through the steps to create one, right? So that, you can actually take action. I don't want this podcast to just be something that you kind of passively listen to. I want you to take action. Just like in episode 1, I gave you actionable items. The power, the results are in the doing, right? I was listening to the radio the other day, or actually it was yesterday, and somebody was coming on and poo-pooing about manifestation and I always get a bit on my hobby horse on this one, but it was so interesting because they were talking about how you can't just sit there and go, oh, I can't wait for my Porsche to land, right? And I was like, that's not what manifestation is about, right? Because you've got to take action. You have to take action. You can't just listen to this and just kind of go, oh, that's nice. And, however you're looking at this, whether it's on your phone or on your desktop, you'll see that I am also giving you steps to take that will help you to take continued action as well. So look out for the kind of like the little show notes that I put against each podcast episode. Okay, so the title of this episode is Irresistible by Design, How to Create a Signature Offer, a Signature Program that your high value clients can't say no to, right? And when I'm talking about those high value clients, I'm talking about like those perfect fit clients who absolutely want what you have, right? And so what we want to do is we want to create a program that they feel like this is irresistible. This is compelling. This is exactly what I need. But before we get to that point, there are some challenges, okay? As there always is, right? And let's talk a little bit about why solopreneurs can find it hard to attract high value clients, okay? And for a lot of solopreneurs, you can get stuck in trading time for money, right? Or, you're trading time, your services. And so you feel like you kind of have got a bit of a block around that, okay? And one of the challenges that I see a lot of solopreneurs struggling with, and this is something that I hear a lot, right? So if you're thinking this, then, you're in good company. When I talk to a client or I'm saying like, I really think that you would benefit from creating a signature program. Here's the number one objection I get. But every one of my clients is so different. They all want different things. And I'm here to tell you, it's not true, right? It really isn't true. That's just a story you're telling yourself, right? Yes, you can look at your client base, and I've got a wide and varied client base. But what I know is that there are commonalities around what they all are looking for, right? So their outcomes, their circumstances, those things might be different, but the result that they want to come and, when they come and work with me, there's commonalities, right? But the challenge is, and this is what's going to make it really hard for you to attract your perfect fit client, is if you insist on telling that story that everybody wants something different and therefore you have to keep tailoring and customizing and bespoking everything, right? Because trust me, that is holding you back. That is not the place that you want to be, right? Because what that means is every single client you take on, you are literally going to be starting from scratch. You are literally going to be starting with a blank sheet of paper. I worked with a client years ago and she was a website designer. And that's exactly the conversation that I had with her, because she was saying every one of my clients is so different. They want something so unique, so bespoke. And I really challenged her on this because, quite frankly, as business owners, as a business owner myself, I'm not a website designer, right? Typically, they're kind of like, well, this is what I want. They have an idea of what the feel, the look, all that kind of good stuff. And I said, but every time you start with a new client, you're starting from scratch, right? And maybe I'm preaching to the converted here. Maybe you're already bought into this idea, but I just can't help but emphasize this, right? So I said, why don't you have like 5 frameworks, like five wireframes of the way that you work in terms of like the website. And then you can show people like templates of them and say, like, is this what you like? And then they go, yes, I love that. But what you would have had is you would have built, and of course, this is the bit that takes a little bit of time and effort, right? But you could say, right, okay, so if you created, like, say, 4 templates, right? And each template has 5 pages, right? But every time you have a client, they pick one and then you can customize with fonts and colors and all that kind of good stuff. But you know what? You know what's not happening? What's not happening is that you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, a blank screen, right? So your focus and emphasis on everyone being different and everything needing to be customized is actually holding you back big time, okay? And this really helps you, sorry, this really stops you from being able to grow the business, right? Because you're going to get stuck in the weeds. Trust me, you're going to get stuck in the weeds, right? And when you don't have a focused offer, right? When you don't have that focused offer, what happens is you really start lacking clarity in your messaging, right? Really and truly, if you've struggled with selling your offers and you think, oh my God, that's like, I don't know what I'm saying, and I'm offering this and I'm offering this, what's happening is that you don't have a focused offer. And so that's making your messaging be very vague and unclear, which means people won't buy, right? A confused mind never buys. So that's not where you want to be, okay? What also happens is if you don't have that focused offer, if you're not clear on what it is that you do with clients, and you can like talk to 100 people in the day, I'm not saying you do this, but if you were talking to people and they all got a sense of what it is that you're doing, let's make it a bit more manageable. Say you're at networking or an event and you speak to 10 different people and they all walk away and they talk to each other and they go, oh, there's Jasmine. And she talks about a profitable 20-hour week business, right? They all have the same idea as to what I do, right? But if one person said, oh, that's Jane over there, I think she does weight loss. And somebody else says, oh, no, I thought it was healthy eating. Or somebody else says, no, I thought that was intuitive eating, right? And they're all getting really confused because you've had different conversations with all of those people. That doesn't make any sense. That is not leverage. Okay, that is wasting a lot of time and in a 20-hour week business, you don't have that time. So you don't want to be messing around with all of that, right? And so what happens is when you have that lack of clarity, you attract the wrong people, right? Again, like I said in episode 1, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just wrong for you. Okay, but you don't want to be attracting those wrong clients. You want to be attracting perfect fit clients. Like, let's be honest, you have a vision in your mind of someone who is so right for you. Maybe it's somebody who already was like a client of yours, or like a composite of clients that you've had, and you're thinking, God, I just, if I could just have like all of them, all of those Michaels, or all of those Barbaras, that you think, God, my business would be amazing, right? So you have that vision, but when you're not clear in your messaging, when you don't have that focused offer, you're attracting all sorts of people who aren't necessarily a good fit, right? Which means that your marketing is really scattered and it's exhausting, right? It is exhausting. That's why you're burned out with all that content creation. That's why you're burned out from being on all the platforms and you're like, I can't do this anymore. That's why people are like going, I'm coming off social media. And then they go, oh, what am I going to do? Because we're coming at it from a place of depletion rather than, oh, I'm so excited. I get to talk to, my ideal client. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, then I know that you want to have a profitable 20-hour week business. You're a solopreneur because you know what? My messaging is super clear, especially with this podcast. And everything that you'll see in my business is all about the 20-hour week business. I've been talking about this for a really long time, over a decade, right? So this is where your clarity is just going to be such, oh, it's like, it's not gold dust, it's flipping gold bars, right? Sorry, went on a bit of a rant there. Okay, so let's talk about what a signature program is, because you might be thinking, I don't want to just sell one offer, right? Because that's going to be boring and I'm multi-passionate, right? Okay, I hear this a lot too. And I listen, like, I'm multi-passionate too. Absolutely, right? I have lots of things that I'm very, very interested in, right? Doesn't mean that you have to create an offer for every single one of those passions, right? What it does mean is that you find a way that brings together who you are as a person, who you're being, who what you're doing, and you bring it into something that makes sense. Because ultimately, remember, you have to sell what you're offering. So we got to make sure that we're meeting a need, a want, a desire for your ideal client, right? So when you say, if you're thinking, well, I'm multi-passionate, it's like, that's great. Okay. But when it comes to your business, and especially if you want to build massive momentum over the next 6, 12 months, this is what we want to focus in on, right? When you're thinking about your signature program, you're thinking about, okay, if my ideal client is at point A and they want to get to point B, right? How do I get them there, right? This is your signature transformation. It's what I call your trademark transformation, right? You get someone from point A to point B. Now, that's your signature transformation, right? And you have a process that gets them from A to B, right? So imagine if you were planning a trip and you're thinking, I'm going to go to New York, right? So you're not just going to sit there going, right, okay, I'm going to just go to New York. I'm just going to teleport. You have a process. So you think, okay, I need to go and find flights. I need to get airport parking. I need to pack my bag, etc., etc. Another example is if you were going to make a lasagna. I make a mean lasagna. If you're not aware of this, I do make a very nice one, right? But if you're making a lasagna, you have a process to make that lasagna, right? Imagine your trademark transformation is like the best lasagna in the world. You're not just sitting there going, okay, I got some mince and I got some tomatoes and I've got some cheese and I've got flour and I'm just going to chuck it all in, right? Because that would be pretty disgusting, right? You have a process, right? You have a process. So, and the work that you do in your business, you have a process. Trust me, you have a process, okay? So a signature offer, a signature program, it's a structured, repeatable process that delivers that specific transformation, right? And it's really designed around your unique expertise and the methods that you've used to help other people get the results, the methods and that you've used to help yourself. So everything that I teach in my book, for example, is everything that I have learned. So everything that I teach in there, it's a highly practical book, but it's all from my own lived experience. This is what I have been doing in my business, right? And here's the thing, right? Imagine a wheel, right? And at the center of that wheel, you've got the little hub and then you've got the spokes coming off it, right? In business, one of the most important things that you will ever do is create focus, right? Now, two of my favorite words for business and business model specifically is simple and lucrative, right? If you keep it simple and you make it lucrative, honestly, that's all you need to know, right? Because you're going to have a really, really beautiful business. What does that actually mean? When you create your signature program, you kind of say, right, this is what I want to get known for, right? And that's a useful question that you can ask yourself is like, what do I want to get known for, right? So if you have that signature offer, signature program, and you say like, okay, I get my clients from A to B, right? And then you think, okay, great. So I've got this signature offer. What you then do is you can turn that signature offer into a signature suite of offers, right? So it's all focused in on the core of your expertise, your unique source, your zone of genius, right? But you get to create versions of that. Now, I like to keep it really simple, like I've just said. So for me, it's like you have a low ticket version, you have a mid ticket version, and you have a high ticket version. Anything like over 1K is high ticket. Anything under 100 is low ticket. And then you've got your middle bit, right? But what that means is you can become a master at what you do, right? You're not constantly reinventing the wheel. You don't feel like you've got imposter syndrome because you're really staying in your lane, right? You're not sitting there trying to be all things to all people. You're not sitting there going, oh my God, I should really promise this, that, and the other because loads of people are getting really great results with that. If that's not your zone of genius, you are setting yourself up to fail, right? If you stay in your lane and you go, I am absolutely red hot with this, right? I can help my clients get from A to B, and I am so solid, so aligned, right? In that people are just like, oh my God, that's amazing. And you get like all these people coming and saying, oh my God, this was amazing. And this was so helpful. And like you're getting client reviews and client testimonials, people who are just so loving what you do. Like that is the fastest path to getting you results. And I'm going to tell you a little secret, right? I haven't shared this openly, right? But this is where I have fallen down because I try to be all things to all people, right? And it is a really bloody hard lesson, right? And that's why I'm so emphatic about it now, because there were several times in my business where I'd be looking at what other people are doing and going, oh, I should offer that. Always feeling like what I was doing was not enough, right? And that's really hard to say. And like, I'm being like, it's actually kind of like quite hard to say to you because it's making me feel quite exposed and vulnerable, right? But I want you to know this, right? That me trying to be all things to all people meant that I had extreme imposter syndrome. Like I was like, oh my God, instead of like staying really true to myself. Like, so what I've been doing for the last few years has been like rock solid in what I do. And that sense of alignment, that sense of embodiment, it is, again, it's not gold dust, it's gold bars, right? Because this is your energy. This is how you show up in the world. When you're really solid in what you do and you kind of go, I know this inside out and I love doing this. Years and years and years ago, like I think it was like 2009, I worked with a mentor, right? And there was one thing that she said, and there were lots of things that she said, she was very good, but there was one thing that she said that really stuck in my head, and I kind of share it with all my clients, and they're always like, oh, that makes so much sense, right? And she said, when you're thinking about the work that you do, right, and we'll use the word niche in this because that's how she described it. She said, but your niche should be an inch wide, maybe that's an inch, and a mile deep. So there's so much in there that you can get your teeth into, but you don't have that broad message that you're like trying to speak to everybody, but you're really narrowing down, but you've got so much depth to what you offer, right? So if there's a part of you that's thinking, oh, a signature program feels like you're limiting me and you're restricting me, not a chance, because trust me, the work that I do. Like there are so many depths that I go to in terms of with my clients, in my programs. And I'm like, oh my God, like surely I've covered everything. No, absolutely not. Right. So this is the beauty of it, that you don't have to do what other people are doing because you think, oh, what I'm doing is not enough. What you are offering is enough. We just need to really nail it down so that you can see that it's an inch wide, a mile deep. Okay. And when you create that signature offer, when you create that signature program that becomes, which you can turn into a signature suite of offers, this is a game changer, right? Because it's so simple. It is such a simple model to use in your business. Your messaging becomes so clear. People see you, and like every time you get on a podcast, every time you do a video or anything, all you're doing is just building massive, massive like this, it's just a huge asset, right? And that is going to sell for you, right? And that's going to be something that we'll talk about in another episode about how you can actually create assets that sell for you. But in order to get to that point, you have to really nail down this bit, okay? So not only does it do all of those things, but it positions you as the expert in your niche, right? Right at the beginning, we were talking about how you want to be seen as the person that people are going to go to. You know, if you're an interior designer and you're thinking, God, when someone's suddenly coming to do this interior designing, you want them to think, oh, I'm going to go to Yasmin if I was an interior designer, right? What it also does was it increases perceived value, right? People start to look at you and go, wow, they must be really good at what they do, right? And I know you already are, so you're not lying, right? But you're upgrading how people perceive you. You're upgrading your positioning. This is incredible, right? This is going to make such a difference, and it's going to make such a difference to the way that you price your offers, right? Again, remember, when you have your signature suite of offers, we're not talking about like, I see people going, oh, high ticket, nobody wants to buy high ticket, and I don't want to just be for the high ticket people. Like, listen, right? I will always stand by that every business should have a high ticket offer. If you don't have one, you're leaving money on the table because there's going to be a percentage of your audience who want that, right? But remember, we talked about low ticket, mid ticket, and high ticket, right? So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We want to make sure that we can cater, but you're not creating all this extra work for yourself because it's all of the suite is based on your signature transformation, okay? And honestly, like it makes your marketing so much easier, so much more easier, so much more streamlined. It is going to just change the way that you look at how you market. And you're just going to be like, oh, so I could just do this, this, and this, and that's it. Sweet, happy days. I can go for that coffee. I can go for my nap. I can go for whatever, right? It's going to make your marketing so much easier. Okay, so let's talk about the steps to creating that signature program, okay? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to define your transformation, right? What is that big result that you can deliver to your ideal client? And this is where you got to be bold, right? So again, like kind of going back to that point about imposter syndrome, it's not about you saying, I can help you do this. And you're like, oh, I can't help them do that at all, right? That's not about that. But it's about making sure that you're not downplaying what you can help someone do, right? You've got to be bold. The first sale is always to you. You need to be the one that really is bought into your offer right at the beginning. If you're not bought into it, why should anybody else be? They're not, okay? So that's really, really important that you need to be really clear on what's that big result that you can deliver to your client. Now, again, you're not making promises. There's no guarantee because there's two of you in this, right? Or more if it's a group program. So it's a collaboration, right? How does this solve their biggest pain point, right? So this is really something that you want to be thinking about. It's picked something that you know that they really, truly desire, right? Either it's like a big pain issue or it's like feeding their big desire. Because the higher the, I've actually got a free guide on this and you can get the link just below this episode. And it's called How to Pick a Juicy Topic for Your Premium Offer. Now, this applies when you're thinking about your signature program, okay? And in that, I give you some really solid advice around how you can actually pick a juicy topic, okay? because it's important. You don't want to choose something that's going to be very lackluster, that somebody doesn't really care about, that there's no urgency, there's no like, oh my God, I have to figure this out. You want to make sure that what you're offering is something that's really irresistible and compelling, right? So that they can't say no to it. Okay, that's really, really important. What you do then is you kind of, so let's give you a couple of examples, right? So so years ago, I had this client of mine who was a gardening landscape consultant, and she was living in Portugal. I don't know whether she still lives there, but she was living in Portugal at the time. And because of the climate, she specialized in plants that don't take a lot of water, that don't need a lot of water, right? Already a very, very unique proposition, right? And we created this whole program around selling that as a transformation, right? And it was phenomenal, right? Just in terms of helping her to see that she didn't have to like just kind of go in and like plant some plants, but she actually upgraded how people saw her and make her be seen as someone who was very high value, right? She was perceived differently. Okay. That's a big result where people are saying, I want a beautiful garden, but we haven't got a lot of water. We want to make sure that it fits in with the climate. I'll give you another example. An accountant I worked with years ago. And one of the things I suggested to her was, in order to be seen, perceived differently from all the other accountants, I said, I want you to add value to what it is that you're doing. Like so many business owners only see their accountants once a year when they're coming to do their taxes, right? And I said, why can't you become like almost like their fractional CFO, like their chief financial officer? And maybe you have a session with them every quarter, like to review where they are, review their books. Maybe you put in bookkeeping in there. I don't know, right? And I said, and then you can charge more. So I'll give you an example. If somebody was charging €500 to do their taxes, right? And I said, okay, well, we could add value, and now you could charge £1,000 for that, right? I suggested that to another accountant and they ran with that and they did. They got clients. Whereas, some people would be like, oh, no one's going to pay that. Really and truly, they will. If you can articulate the value, which goes back to the messaging piece of it, right? So when you think about what that big transformation is, what takes someone from point A to point B, right? You want to think about what are the steps? What are the steps that take you there, right? And this is where, if you're a coach, this can sometimes get a bit woolly. And so this is where you really do need guidance around making sure that it doesn't get woolly, right? Because I've seen this, I've done this, I've been doing this for such a long time. I can show you how to break down this process, the structure, the steps, if you like, so that they become a really compelling program. Because if you get this bit, like if it's not right, then everything else kind of falls off that. So it's really important that we get this right. In the show notes, I've got a link to my Package for Profit course, the DIY course, and that shows you how to actually create your signature program in a lot more depth than obviously what I'm going to be able to do here. Okay. And then what you want to be thinking about is, okay, so this is my transformation. This is my promise, right? This is my process, right? How am I going to package this? Like, how am I going to offer this, right? And then how am I going to price it, right? So packaging, it might be thinking, okay, this is going to be a 6-month program or a 6-week program. Okay, that's what I mean when I'm talking about packaging. And whatever your package looks like, your pricing needs to reflect the value. Let me add in a little note here around the very, very terrible advice that's out there about pricing, right? You do not price according to your worth. That is the worst advice I've ever heard. You price according to the value that you're creating and that you're offering in your programs, or your courses, your services, whatever it might be, right? So your pricing has to reflect the value that someone is going to get. For example, in my multiplier program, I know that you're going to absolutely be able to create a 5-10 times return on investment in that program. I know for all of my courses and programs, you're going to be able to create at least a 5-10 times ROI, right? Because I know that what I'm teaching works, right? So you can't be timid with your pricing, right? But you also don't want to be so bullshit and that you just kind of go, oh, I'm going to charge 30 grand for 3 months. And someone's like, that's a deposit on a house, right? You want to make sure that you're accurately reflecting the value, right? And with pricing, You want it to feel like a little bit of a stretch for your client because you know what? They're going to show up because they're like, I got to make that return on investment. And I don't care whether it's a low ticket or a mid ticket or a high ticket, right? You want people who are ready to do the work because if they're not going to do the work, they're not going to get the results. And then they're not going to see how amazing you are, right? And remember this, right? And this is why I always say, like, have a high ticket offer. And a high ticket is only like 1K plus. Now, some people might disagree with me and say, oh, no, a high ticket is 10K. My definition is 1K, and I'm sticking with that. So anything above 1K, right? But the truth is, when you focus your mind on the transformation that you're helping someone to create, right, they're going to value your clarity, your process, and that your confidence in being able to get that result, right? They are going to value that. And then therefore they are going to pay your fees. They're going to be happy to pay your fees. So if you're fed up of people not paying your fees, then trust me, this is absolutely going to be crucial. I've got a course on this, a DIY course called Pricing Alchemy. And this is exactly what we focus in on. It's about how you can charge the prices that you deserve, not what you're worth, but what your work deserves. Right? So make sure to grab that just on the show notes here as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the common roadblocks that you might be experiencing, or maybe some of the limiting thoughts that you might have around creating a signature program. You might be thinking, oh, Yasmin, you're limiting me. Honestly, we've already addressed this. You're not. This is going to make your life so much easier. I want you to think of this signature program as like your launch pad, because it's literally going to help you to soar. The name of this podcast is, after all, Solo and Soaring. Okay, trust me, you already have a body of knowledge, expertise, and experience that is going to become a beautiful signature program, which in turn is going to become a beautiful suite of offers. You already have what you need. Please do not tell me that you need to get another accreditation, another certification, another course, or anything like that, because right now you have enough, right? Because otherwise, you're always going to be playing to that story of what you know isn't enough. And that's just not true, right? If you're worried that no one's going to buy it, then this is why we test. Everything in business that we do is a test. You've got to test it out. You've got to try different things. Don't be afraid of that, because honestly, that's where you'll get your results. If you put something out there, and this is why I never recommend building something as in like a full course or a program or anything like that before you've sold it, because you want the idea to be validated, right? I never create anything until I've sold it, right? If I don't sell it, I don't create it. That's the bottom line, which is great for me because I know then that when I've been paid, I'm paid to create it, right? So you absolutely need to get it validated. Even if one person buys, you just need to find more of those people, right? But even if just one person buys, that's your idea validated, okay? And if you feel like, oh God, Yasmin, I'm not an expert, okay, trust me, right? You only need to be a few steps ahead of your ideal client, right? And this is really, really important because people get so hung up on the word expert. And what I say is you have expertise. You don't have to call yourself an expert or a guru or anything like that. It's like, oh, that just makes me cringe, right? But you have expertise. You have experience. Like I've been coaching and training and doing leadership development for 24 years now at this stage, right? It has been a long time. I'm not going to sit there going, I'm an expert in leadership or I'm an expert in coaching or whatever, but I definitely have expertise, right? I definitely know how to get results, right? So it's really important that you remember that and you focus in on that, because you don't need to be 100 steps. You just need to be a few steps, because then you're relatable. Yeah. And that's really important as well. Okay. So here are some action items for you. Be sure to check out the links that I talked to you about today. So grab that free guide. That's all about how to pick a juicy topic. Now, the guide is about how to pick a juicy topic for your premium offer, but it works really, really well. Just think of it as if your premium program, right? And remember, you're just going to create an offshoot of those to create your low and mid ticket. So get that guide. It's free. Just click on the link and you'll get instant access. Be sure to check out the Package for Profit course, where I teach you my detailed process for how you can actually create your signature program. Click the link for the book. If you haven't read my book, be sure to grab the book because it is packed full of everything that I teach. And that is the stuff that I teach day in, day out. The difference is when you come and work with me, whether it's one-to-one or in my program multiplier, you get me. I will look at your business. I am like all in. I want to help you and support you and guide you. So that's the difference. You can grab Pricing Alchemy. That will teach you how to charge the prices you deserve. And of course, Multiplier as well, which is my 12-month mastermind, where I teach you all of this step by step, and you get access to me for a year, Monday to Friday. I will add that in, and excluding holidays. But for a whole year, like you literally can get my guidance every single day, right? So before we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you, like, just think about some of these actionable items in terms of your signature program, right? So really get clear on what is that big transformation, right? How do you help people get from A to B? Sorry, no, let me start one step back. What is that big transformation? Where are you getting them to? What's the result that someone's going to create, right? Then you want to be thinking about how do you get them from point A to point B? And it's really important to be very clear in your mind about what point A looks like and what point B looks like as well, okay? And just sketch it out. Sketch out a very, very simple program outline, grab package of profit, and you'll be able to kind of fill in the blanks, okay? And really, what I will urge you to do is keep it simple. Keep it simple, right? And take imperfect action. And that is going to make all the difference. If you're getting stuck in procrastination and you're like, oh my God, this isn't perfect, it's not meant to be, right? We evolve, we iterate, right? We test. That's business. That's okay. Nothing is ever set in stone. But what I really want to emphasize to you in this episode is how powerful it is to create a signature program that really reflects your expertise and how that helps you to become known in your niche. You become the go-to person. It changes everything for you from a messaging perspective, from a pricing perspective, from a deliverability perspective, in terms of the deliverables that you have. It's going to make your business so much simpler and so much more lucrative. And really in business, that whole idea of simplicity and focus, honestly, it is just going to absolutely compound for you, right? Keep it simple, make it lucrative. Okay. Oh, so exciting. I'm so happy that I've done this episode for you. God, this feels like a full-blown course for you, I will add. So, and I think it's great. I'm just loving this. Okay, don't forget to join me for episode 3. This is where we're talking about your 24/7 sales team. So you do not want to miss this. All right, my love, I'm going to wrap up because I talked for a little bit longer than I expected, but I trust that you got the value that you needed from this episode. Check out the links and I will see you in the next one. Take care.